Good evening and welcome to SIMS this evening. So SIMS stands for Suffolk Internet Marketing Specialists. It's a group that we've run for a long time. Can I ask everybody to go on mute? There's a little bit of feedback. Thank you. Thank you so much. Right, so welcome this evening to SIMS, which is Suffolk Internet Marketing Specialist, and we sit under a sort of overarching umbrella organisation called the Ipswich and Suffolk Tech Network. And by Christmas, we're hoping to have 10 meetups that we represent right the way through from IoT to digital creative, and lots of, there's a real specialism around cybersecurity within it. So if you sign up for the updates on ISTN, you should find out about all of the events that we run. SIMS was a specialist group to teach small businesses and teaching non-technical people technical things. My argument for technical was that if you don't teach people what the words mean, they won't understand it. And as time's gone on, we've really looked at general business growth, and we're very lucky to be connected to people. I think published author and I'm sure award-winning Matt Sykes here is this evening to talk to us about sales. And the topic is why people buy and why they don't. So Matt's going to run through that with you now, and he'll tell you about himself as well and give you some instructions about what he wants you to do, whether he wants you to shout out, etc. So he'll run through all of that. At the end, I'll just run through a quick, I'll pop a link into the chat, which is all of the other events that we're running. So we've got events running weekly, some 2 or 3 a week between now and the end of November. Also an offer that if any of you have a topic that you think people want to hear about, do let us know. So thank you for listening to my introduction, and I will pass you over to Matt.
Thank you, Sam. Really great to have the opportunity to spend a bit of time in your company, everyone. So thanks for joining the call this evening. I'm not going to tell you much about me because I don't think that's the point of this session. I think the point of this session is for you to have a look at some of the stuff that goes on in my world. I mean, I will explain one thing. I've been in sales for about 25 years. Most of that was crap. And what I'm going to share with you is some of the crap parts, because I think it's really easy for us to think that things like selling is easy, and it's not. It's really difficult. And it wasn't until the last sort of 10 years that I managed to grasp it. So sort of my overriding takeaway I'd love you all to have is, if you are in a position in the business where you're trying to grow revenue for your company and you're finding it difficult, don't worry, because like most people are, and I'm going to show you some information that's going to help bring that to life. And of course, what I'm going to try and do as well is share a few bits and pieces of some of the things that I do. And if some of that might work for you, just to encourage you to go and try it. I'm going to share my screen. I've got a few slides, not many, but just some that I'm going to share with you, and hopefully that will bring the whole story to life. So let me just try and get around this tech thing and do that. Can you all see that? Great. So here's the whole point of what I'm trying to achieve this evening. What I know from my many experiences of life is we forget loads and loads of stuff, and some of you will be familiar with the forgetting curve. And in principle, within about an hour of us finishing this evening, you will have forgotten most of what I've shared with you, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's just kind of normal. So what I'd really like to try and do, if I can, is encourage you to go to the right-hand side of that brain there and look at that 90% of learning is lost, and try, if we can, to take just 10% of this away and introduce it into your day-to-day job or your hobby outside of work, whatever it is that's allowing you to grow your business from a sales perspective. Can I at least find something in there to allow you to go and do that? Now for me to be able to do that, I've got to kind of know what your problem is, and of course I don't. So again, I would encourage you to use the chat box, but let's look at it from a different perspective, because there's not too many people on the call. Just shout something out. So as we go through the next sort of 45 minutes, I have no problem if you want to just shout out and ask a question or raise some point. So as long as you're comfortable doing that, I'd much rather respond verbally than go through the chat box. But by all means, put some stuff in the comments box as well. And Sam, if you...
Matt, can I just say, we can't, at the moment, we can see your kind of presenting screen, and
okay.
See is the why people, we can't see the brain image. Even if you either press publish, I think, or just move down to the second image, we'll be able to see it.
Hang on a sec. Oh, I know why that's not working. Is that working?
No, it's not. They do. No, there we can see it now. It's perfect. We can see it.
So it looks like I'm not in present mode.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can.
I think you might be sharing your wrong screen.
Do you think so? Right. let me share the right screen then.
The right screen then.
I want to share. Which one do I want to share? How's that?
How's that?
Still the same, but it's fine.
Are you sure? Okay. So listen, objective is, can you leave here at least one thing that you might remember in the next 60 days? That would be my absolute dream come true. Let me just explain very, very briefly. So my current role is I'm head of sales for a company called the DPO Center. We're in data protection. And we basically help CEOs sleep at night so that they don't have to worry about getting tapped on the shoulder by the ICO because they've had a data breach. And the problem with that, of course, is they can get fined huge amounts of money. So we take that problem away from organizations. I haven't always been head of sales with the DPO Center. Prior to that, and the reason why Sam and I know each other is I used to have a sales training company. So for about 5 years, I ran a company called Salescadence. I still run that in my part-time. I still have one or two one-to-one clients that I talk to in the evenings or at weekends. And what allowed me to have a sales training company was, of course, having the ability to know how people buy things and how we can help sell things to people. Help people buy what we sell is probably the best way of explaining it. Prior to that, of course, I didn't know how to sell. And that was my point at the start of the call. I spent the vast percentage of my 25 years in the packaging industry, about 16 years. And most of those years, I wasn't particularly good at selling. But nor was anybody else around me, and none of us knew we weren't pretty good at selling. And that's the bizarre state of the world of corporate sales, if I'm honest with you. And I see that quite a lot, especially in the last 5 years, and I've worked with clients in that space. Most people are either really average at selling, or worse than that, they're not very good at all. And I think it's okay to be like that, as long as you know that you are, because if you know you're not very good at something, you can put your hand up and ask a question, and you can improve. But what I wanted to try and do for you is bring some context to that. So I don't know if you can see that stat there, but there's an organization called the Sandler Research consultancy company. And back in 2019, before the pandemic, they did a research of across the globe, they have 300 training centers around the world. And they did a sort of straw poll and did some market research of their clients. And the staggering fact that came out of that was, in most cases, most sales teams are failing to get anywhere above 60% of annual sales target. And I can really resonate with that in my previous time in the corporate industry. Sam, are you going to say something?
No.
Okay, sorry. Just
you need to go down to the next slide. You've moved on to the next slide, but it's not on the screen.
Yeah, perfect.
Oh, okay. So I can see what's going wrong now. Got it. Okay. So I need to just change this slide. Just bear with me 1 second while I get these presentation slides set up correctly. Apologize. Please hold the line, folks. Can you see that?
Yeah, we're back to the first slide. So if you go, we can see we're still seeing exactly the same as we were before. It's not a problem, but we need to be on slide number 3.
Can you see that now? Slide 3.
No.
Oh, crikey, what's going on here?
I genuinely don't know. We've had this issue before, like this exact same issue.
Sorry, folks.
That's all right.
I do need to get this right, obviously, because there's a little bit of animation that works. Have a think, just while I try and sort this out, have a little think about the 1 or 2 things that you'd quite like to take away from the session, if I can get it going, of course. Try and pop those in the comments in the chat box, because at the end of the session, we'll quickly go through them and see if we've answered them, or at least found a way of trying to help you solve those ones.
That's brilliant. We're on.
Are we there?
That's literally it. Well done. Fantastic.
Great. So I think what I was trying to say at that point was there's the facts to say that not everybody's very good at what we do. And that's okay. It's okay to do that. Now, I was reading a book a couple of weeks ago called The Sales Manager Survival Guide. And one of the interesting things in that survival guide is the amount of time that sales teams spend selling their product or service to clients. And as you can see there, it's 15%. And again, vast amount of research, thousands and thousands of salespeople answering these questions. The truth and the reality is actually we're only very productive between 30 and 50% of the time. And in this study, it was fair to say that the salespeople were happy to accept that they were only productive for 30% of the time. Now, the challenge with that, of course, is if you take a 15% average selling time and you drop it into a 30% productivity, you end up with a sales, if you like, effectiveness of around about 20 minutes per day. And what this starts to do then, of course, is bring to life the reasons why people aren't hitting sales target. Now, just out of curiosity, is there anybody here who manages the amount of time they spend on anything, let alone selling?
I do try.
Yeah. If we don't manage it or measure it, of course, we can't do anything about it. So again, this is a sort of first potential takeaway I would suggest to people. There's an organization called SureLaws. I don't know if you've ever heard of SureLaws, but if you have, you might be familiar with something called red, blue, black. So again, if one of the challenges that you've got and the reason why you've come on this call is you're perhaps not getting the sorts of results that you're expecting to get from a sales perspective, then maybe the first takeaway to think about is, okay, well, I'll start measuring how much time I spend trying to sell stuff. Now, some of that time you're going to spend will be what we call red, which SureLaws refer to as sort of administration work. This is anything that you can't apply an invoice to. So paperwork, things like filling in expenses, filling in your tax return. All of these things are a cost and a burden to your business, but you can't get paid for doing it. But if you didn't do it, your business would fall over. And so for those that fancy having a go at this after the call, perhaps, start to put a color-coded dot against your to-do list and start to work out how much of your time you're spending on the things that don't bring you a return on your investment of time. And those are the red things. And I've put a 10% number there because in my world, if I'm doing more than 10% admin, then I'm taking time away from the other important areas of the business. Other important areas of the business are the black areas, and the black areas are strategy. And if you're a founder or a single sole trader, you'll spend loads of time doing this stuff. I used to waste days of my life in my sales training business, strategizing about the future, coming up with new training ideas, great ways to promote the business, all sorts of marketing campaigns. And of course, they are very essential, but of course, you can't actually link an invoice to them, not yet anyway. Marketing, of course, will ultimately result in eyes on your product or service, which ultimately could mean you get a chance to raise an invoice, but there's no guarantee. So yes, we have to do the black stuff, but the danger is if it's any more than 20% of your time, then you take time away from where you should be focusing. And where you should be focusing is the blue stuff, the revenue stuff. This is the stuff that you can tangibly link an invoice to. And the sorts of things that would be blue things would be some form of prospecting, starting to reach out to potential people to have conversations, going to networking events, actually having sales calls and sales meetings. All of those things ultimately are what I would class as blue. And the blue things are the high return, high value areas of your working life that you should really start to focus on. So for those that want to, maybe the first takeaway is have a go at red, blue, black and see if that can start to bring a little bit more clarity to where you are or you aren't spending your sales time. Most of you will be familiar with this. This is a pyramid, if you like, or a triangle, giving you clear identification of just who isn't buying your stuff right now. And I always find this quite fascinating because as we sit on this call together, there's only 3 to 5% of your total addressable market that actually wants to buy what you sell. And there's tons and tons of research out there to confirm that. And the reason why I've put that slide there is, and maybe it's just me in a previous life, but I used to put so much focus and attention on everybody that came within an inch of me, assuming, of course, they wanted to buy from me. And the reality is they don't. And so another takeaway really from this part of the talk really is cut yourself some slack, let's not be, and take this with in the positive way in which I mean to explain it to you, let's not get deluded by the fact that everybody in front of us is going to buy from us. Because even though some might in the future, right at this moment in time, there's a very small percentage of your total addressable market that really does want to buy what you've got right now. Where we need to start spending more of our time perhaps is underneath that line, looking at that 30% who have a need, but at the moment are not ready to buy. And this is where people like Sam come in and start to effectively provide those people with valuable pieces of information through marketing and campaigns, so that when they're ready to jump into the 10% bracket, you're right at the top of their list, you're on their radar, and they start to reach out to you before they reach out to other people. So again, so next takeaway really is cut yourself some slack. If you find someone in front of you that looks like an ideal customer, they could well be, but chances are they won't be. And even if they are, they're probably not going to buy today. What's also included on that triangle is the bottom 60%. And this is staggering. It wasn't until I joined the DPO Center and I measure everything that comes through our CRM, every lead that comes in, what happens to that lead, where it goes, and where those leads convert, and what our conversion rate is. And 60% of buyer-generated leads that come into our business go absolutely nowhere. We're currently at 58% year to date. That's just frightening when you think about it. Someone has taken the time to submit a contact form through our website and then doesn't follow up to ask a question. We take them through a sort of a 3 to 5 email response, and in some cases we'll pick up the phone and give them a call. But it's just staggering when you think about it. More than 50% of the people that might reach out and ask for a conversation or ask for information end up don't following through. So again, next takeaway really is just take some pressure off. Everybody in front of you who looks like a customer, start to approach them with an element of skepticism, and without sort of losing the respect that we have for people that might buy what we sell. Start to challenge them a little bit more in a very positive and respectful way. Challenge them, because I'm here to share with you that it's certainly, as far as my business is concerned, 58% of the people that send me a lead through our website don't do anything. Now, what's interesting about that 60% that don't, there's 40% that do. And again, maybe a nod of the head if you find that when you're engaging with people, you're having sales conversations, perhaps they're asking you to submit a quote or proposal, that price starts to heavily dominate that conversation. Does anybody on this call find that people tend to move towards price? How much does it cost? That's quite expensive. If that is the case, the most frightening thing about that is this: that of the 40% of the people that do, so not the 60 that don't, the 40 that do, 70% of that 40%, so that's 28%, will go to people like me that positively challenge buyer behavior. And we'll come on to that in a second. Those that don't positively challenge buyer behavior end up going into a price discussion. And that remaining 12% are fighting out against 3 others or 2 others. Let's say 2 others. There's always at least 3, isn't there? When they always say, oh, we're just checking you against 2 others. We've got a protocol in purchasing here. We've got to get 3 quotes. If you're one of those 3, you've got less than a 5% chance of success, because 12% divided by 3 is about 4. So again, maybe here's a takeaway for this: that if you find that price is dominating your conversations with potential customers, you're only really going to have a 5% chance of success. And are you willing to accept that? And if you're not, then maybe there's something I can do to try and help. Final stat before we try and get into some of the meat and potatoes, and I can start to share with you some things that we can do to address this. But I do want to try and bring facts and substance to how difficult it is to sell. It's really interesting in my world, because most of the things I see on things like LinkedIn, or if I take advice from anybody on the high street about what they think salespersons like, I normally get very less than helpful comments about salespeople. They're sleazy, they're a bit pushy, they're a bit aggressive. And they're probably right in terms of some of the people they've met. But what I'm trying to do here is just show you how really, really difficult it is to sell. And actually, when you find someone who does it very, very well, it feels like you haven't been sold at all. Here's some more of the pain though. You work really, really, really hard. You spend loads and loads of money on your website. You have a fantastic marketing campaign. Probably Sam's involved with it. You spend lots and lots of money creating eyes on your prize. And then you have a first meeting, and the stats coming out of Connect and Sales, an American company who are very much into telephony and cold calling. I've done so much work on this that when you extrapolate the information down, how successful cold calls are at getting an actual meeting, and then you look at the stats at how the first meeting converts into a second, 88% of salespeople are failing to deliver enough value on the first meeting in order to get second. So all of that time and effort and money and cost of sales is effectively lost because people like me don't know how to convert someone from a first meeting into a second. And this is why we have such a huge problem. And the reason why that happens, and I've worked this out now after 25 years, is that most salespeople won't have a process. Now, every one of you in your business will have a process for different areas of your business. All of you will be measuring stuff. My question to you is, do you have a sales process? And if you don't, I'll share with you what mine is, and you can decide whether some of that might work for you. What I can tell you is that every buyer you've ever met and every buyer you ever will meet has a buyer's process. And the great thing about that is you and I are buyers. And we have exactly the same process too. And I'm going to share the process with you right now. So here's our buyer. And the very first thing that buyers do is they lie. Now, I don't mean that aggressively or disrespectfully. And if you're familiar with the Sandler selling system and the buyer seller dance, then this is exactly what that is. This is something that David Sandler created back in the 50s. I encourage you to look at it after this call. But you will start to see this, not only in your own behavior, but in the behavior of the people that you're trying to help buy what you sell. The very first thing that buyers do is they lie. And the reason that they lie is to protect themselves. They want to protect themselves from idiots like me, the salesperson who's going to go and relieve them of their cash. Okay. And most of you have probably been on the receiving end where perhaps you've asked them about budget and they say, yes, we've got some. And then for whatever reason, you find out they haven't. Or they tell you that they're the decision maker. It's down to them to make the decision. And of course, they're not. There's always people behind them. And they tell you that, yeah, they're ready to buy now. And then when you send in the quotation, it's crickets and you never hear from them again. So sadly, the very first thing that buyers do when they come onto a call with people like us is they have their shield up. They're very anxious and nervous about what might happen to their cash. It's just a fact of life, folks. The second thing that they do in their process is they want to steal information. And you might say that steal is quite a harsh word. I could have written there, I want to try and get some stuff for free, but I couldn't fit it on the slide. But they're there to steal information. And the information they're trying to steal is obvious. There's one thing that you've got that they haven't got, but they can't find on your website, and it's called your price. Most people won't share their price on the website for all the right and valid reasons. And most of us, when we're buying something, we'll go and research all around the internet, look at reviews, and in most cases, the only thing that we can't find to allow us to hit the buy now button or decide a supplier is what their fees are going to be. And so they're coming onto that call, and the one thing that they want to get is they want to steal the price. And quite often than not, and you might have experienced this as well, what they're also asking you to do is after a meeting, that was a really successful meeting there, Richard, thanks ever so much. I wonder if you could do me a favor. Could you send me a summary email afterwards and then send me a proposal? And all of that information we seem to gladly give for free. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't give that away. All I'm saying is be mindful of the word free. Happily trade and get something in return, but handing out a quotation or a proposal without some sort of reassurance that you're going to get something in return probably isn't the right thing to do. A really good friend of mine, a guy called Benjamin Dennehy, talks about sending quotations as a way of documenting your stupidity. And sadly, that feels about perfectly right from my perspective. The third thing in the buyer's process is they mislead. So we go back and we follow up with them after we've sent our proposal in. Normally takes about 3 weeks because they never pick the phone up or answer emails. But when they do, they normally hit us with some kind of objection. So the mislead is something like, yeah, it's a bit expensive, or I need to run this past the senior management team and get their buy-in. Or yeah, we're not quite ready to go for it yet. We're going to start that in Q4. And what they're trying to do there is either reduce your offer down, so devalue it, or they never wanted it in the first place. And now what they're trying to do is get you off the call. They haven't got the heart to say, I'm not interested, but they know from experience that most salespeople give up after one try. So as long as they say, actually, give me a call in about a week's time, they normally allow that to go through because they don't normally get that call from the salesperson. And if they do call, they don't answer the phone, they try again. And within 2 or 3 times, most salespeople will give up after 2 or 3 attempts. So at that point, they're either trying to devalue your offer, or they're just trying to say no and they haven't got the heart or the courage to do so. The final part of the buyer's process is they vanish. You never hear from them again. They've got your price, they've got your quotation. 5 things happen to a quotation, by the way, when you send it in. One of those is they'll go straight back to their incumbent supplier, show them it, and go, unless you drop below this, I'm going to move this to Richard. And so the incumbent supplier drops his price. Richard's given away his cash for free, done all the hard work. And sadly, when he picks up the phone and tries to get in touch with the buyer, well, the buyer's work's done. We are now irrelevant. Now, rhetorical question, but I'm kind of confident that most of you can see that, not only in the way that you approach or transact with certain people, let's call them prospects or potential customers, but isn't that also how we behave sometimes in front of salespeople? I know I do, not quite so much anymore. I'm a bit weird when it comes to salespeople. I try and work with them, but in principle, most of us are willing to accept that that buyer's process exists. And some of you on this call will be stuck in the middle of that right now. Some of you will be frustrated that you do send a quotation in and you get nothing back. And really what I try and do in the next 25 minutes that we've got is to show you how you can try and not work against that. You can't compete against the buyer's process. It will never change. All I'm encouraging you to do is to work with it. So let's have a look at how we work with it. And what I'm sharing with you now in the sort of second half of this talk really is how I do my day-to-day world, my day-to-day life. So head of sales at the DPO center, I will typically have 4 calls like this for about 30 minutes each with a prospect most days of the week. So I'm going to repeat this process 4 times a day. And up to you if you decide to engage with it and go with some of it or all of it or none of it, but this works for me. We are 30% above target already this year. We will go through our annual target by the end of October. And, I couldn't do my job effectively if I didn't use this as a process. What do we know about sales? We know one thing. We get a lead that comes through, and we know at the start there's an opening point, some kind of engagement with the prospect. And we know at the end, it ends up with a close. Not necessarily closing the sale, but the close of the meeting. Is anybody on this call happy to accept that selling isn't a straight line like that? Does anyone like me have it going like all over the place, sometimes backwards? Yeah. And the reason why that happens is because selling isn't a straight line. Despite what Jordan Belfort says, it's not straight line, it's multi-dimensional. All right. And the reason why it's multi-dimensional is there are 2 people involved. And whenever you've got humans involved in something, it goes a little bit weird. Okay. So let's accept the fact that this is kind of a multi-dimensional thing, this selling thing. Now, sometimes above the line, it can be a very positive experience when we're having a conversation with someone who's essentially putting their hand up and saying, I'm interested to buy what you sell. Sometimes it can be quite a negative experience. I had one this afternoon at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I had a call with somebody. I won't bore you with the details, but it didn't go very, very well. And the reason it didn't go very well was because the person on the end of the phone was feeling in that kind of red space. I could tell. And as much as I tried to put her off and let's talk again another day, she wanted to go through. And it was very, very difficult to communicate with her. That's life. That's what people are like. And we have to accept that. And so another takeaway for me is when you enter into any sales conversation with a prospect, accept the fact that we've got humans involved and it could go in very, very different directions. Have you heard of the expression, people buy emotionally and then they justify afterwards intellectually? Yeah, it's a pretty well-known phrase. So we have to accept that the buyer or the prospect can feel both positive and can feel both negative. Equally as true, therefore, if we're to accept the logical part of that statement, they can also think in a constructive and helpful way, and they can think in a negative and unhelpful way as well. So there's all sorts of thinking and feeling going on, okay? And if I was to say to you, and maybe if you've got a piece of paper in front of you, here's the first exercise. If you were to start with your pen on the word open and kept it on the paper and moved it all the way across to the word close, how do you think that meeting would go? Let's call it a 30-minute meeting. How much of the time would you spend in the red area? how much of the time would you spend in the green area? Because you're going to have to transfer through both of those, because people buy emotionally in a positive and a negative way, and they justify intellectually, think in a positive and a negative way. You have to transfer the buyer through both of those spaces, because if you don't get them through both of those spaces, they probably won't make a decision. The art and the substance of helping people buy something is to allow them to be sold emotionally and then to justify that decision intellectually thereafter. Is anybody willing to draw that line and then hold it up?
Yes.
Who'd like to have a go?
Everybody have a go. I feel you should all play.
Those that want to. Sam, why didn't you be the guinea pig? How does it work for you? Even though you think you might have seen this before. Paul, what have you got there, Paul? Okay, so there's Paul. Can everyone see Paul? So it sort of started up positive, and then it went negative, then it went positive, then it went negative, then it went positive, then it went negative, and then it ended up middle, right? Has everyone got something similar? What have you got, Sam?
I've got, so by the time they come to me, they're normally a bit broken because they've had a bad experience elsewhere.
Okay.
And then they tell me all their sort of woeful stories. And then what I then generally do is tell them worse stories and try and make them feel better. So then I'm like trying to be that sunny side up. Hey, listen, it's going to be fine. Other people have had this exact same experience. Then we go through. And then I think they leave the call. Generally, they've been Sam Parnelled. It's genuinely a thing where they're like, that was a lot of information. And so they leave the call a bit, normally back in the middle, but a bit kind of like, you've solved my problem on one level because you've explained it and made me feel better about it. But now I've got to go away and ruminate slightly.
Great. I like both of those answers. Paul's was brilliant. Yours was too, Sam. It's a combination of the two, in fact. The perfect sales call looks like this. And as I said to you earlier, you have to transfer your prospect through both positive and negative emotion and thinking intellectual space. And if you don't, you run a high risk of them not making a decision. If you hear her, I'll think it over at the end of the time when you pitch something, it means you haven't got them through that emotional and that thinking space. They haven't had enough time to justify what's in front of them. But what this now starts to do for us is it starts to split a 30-minute sales call into two halves. And we can now start to break this down. Okay, the first half looks like it's going in a very positive direction. And the second half looks like it's going in a very negative direction. Why would that be? Well, like most people, I want anybody that communicates with me to feel good about themselves at the start. But if I'm going to get them to move and do something, and let's be honest about it, the whole point of helping people buy something is to solve a problem. People only buy two things: to solve a problem or improve something that already exists. People are coming to Sam because the last person that they trusted with their digital marketing didn't do a particularly good job, so that they've experienced it, but they want an improvement. So people only buy two things. So positive at the start, make them feel good about the reason why they've reached out, and then start to take them on that journey about what might go wrong if they don't take action. And that is effectively how people will buy from you. You've got to take them through that space. But of course, there's a buyer's process. We've got to remember that. So we start to put that now back in there as well. And so it's no longer just two halves. It's now 4 quarters. Because at the start, I know they're going to come on the call and defend themselves. And if I can't do something to help them undefend themselves and be open and accepting that we're going to have a conversation and that I'd like you to start to trust me, it's over. If in the second quarter, I can't do something to stop them from just asking for my fee and stealing that information, it's going to give me a problem. In the third quarter, if I think there might be some sort of objection about price, that's going to be a problem. And obviously, what I don't want to do at the end is vanish. So look, there are 6 steps that I take every person who comes to me at the DPO Centre through on a first-time Teams call that kind of guarantees, not every time, but most of the time guarantees me a second meeting. And if I can get them into a second meeting, that normally means that we're going to have a successful conversation, which may, some of the time, turn into a sale. I don't win every piece of business. I don't know anybody that does. And if someone tells you they do, I would be highly skeptical of that. But the name of the game is, can I get somebody through 30 minutes to a point where they want to make a date in the diary to meet me again? Something happens at the start. Number one, we've got to do something there to get the meeting off. Then something needs to happen at the top when they're feeling great about themselves. We're then going to move them down into the third stage. Then we've got at the fourth stage, we've got to start to do something so that they don't handle us, don't give us some kind of objection about price or decision making or time. So we've got to do something there. At the fifth element, we're starting to bring them back up to the surface. And then finally, on the sixth point, we've got to do something at the end, which guarantees they're not going to disappear into the witness protection bracket. Let me take you through those steps one at a time in the time we've got left. The very first thing that needs to happen is we've got to build this thing called rapport. Does anybody know what rapport really means in the sales context, apart from you, Sam, because you know the answer? Anybody willing to open up their mic and tell me what they think rapport is? And more importantly, what's its point? It doesn't matter. Shall I tell you? Go on.
I was going to say it's to make somebody feel that you are thinking the same as them, and therefore they will then trust you to be taken where you want them to go. So that's the build up.
Yeah. So we can class that as a little bit of a chit chat. Do you want to just switch that? That's brilliant, Paul. So a little bit of a game of tennis where, when at the start of the tennis match, they're sort of knocking the ball across the net to each other. There's a bit of a warm up before the real event starts at Wimbledon. That's essentially what's happening with rapport. But you notice where rapport is. Rapport sits on that middle line. And that middle line is where I want to start and I want to finish. And I'm going to call that middle line calm. Confident line, I'm going to call that. My objective in rapport, and ideally yours too, is to get your prospect or your buyer to be calm about the situation they find themselves in. Because sometimes, as happened to me this afternoon, they can be right down the bottom in the red stuff. And as much as I tried to move that lady up the line, I couldn't quite get there. And the net result of that meeting was not great. Okay. So at the start, we need to have some kind of rapport opener that at least makes them start to feel, okay, I'm comfortable now. Let's go into step number two. One of the things I always ask on a first time call with somebody is, great to see you. Just out of curiosity, how did you find us? It's a great way to start a conversation because they have to tell you effectively why they're on the call. You'd be amazed the number of people that will send a contact form into my company. And when I ask them that question, great, just out of curiosity, how did you find us? 90% of them say Google. Now, because they've told me Google, good information, because it makes me think they're looking at other people as well. What they haven't said is, oh, Richard referred me. He's a good friend of mine. He knows how you guys work over there, told me you're the best in town. If someone said that to me, then I'm in a reasonably strong place. Would you agree? But when people say, I found you on Google, it kind of makes me think they'll find others as well then. Now, it's not a deal breaker, because my follow-up to that in rapport is, great, tell me what you know about the DPO Centre then. And my encouragement to you is to try and find a way of bringing that into your conversation. Tell me what you know about my business. It's a really safe question to ask because most people research before they reach out to a buyer, to a seller, don't they? Because we all do. Very few people will engage with you without having done some research. And it's a wonderful chance for them to start to feel good about themselves when they tell you, yeah, you're the DPO Centre. I had a look on your website. Actually, got quite a lot of really interesting products on there. I really like some of those downloads that you give away for free. I'm not trying to swim in the glory that when I'm being told that. I'm now watching the person across the Zoom screen feeling good about themselves. They're starting to justify why they reached out in the first place. And that's a positive thing. And now we start this journey. So now we're starting to have a conversation. The second thing that now needs to start to happen, now that they've dropped their anxiety down and they're no longer in the presence of some sort of sleazy salesperson, here's someone who feels like they're interested to know more. I need to now set a set of rules in place. And there are a number of things which are non-negotiable as far as I'm concerned, okay? Clearly, we've got a finite amount of time. A bit like us, we've got 16 minutes left, right? Roughly, we can go over a little bit if you want to. But in principle, we've got 16 minutes left. So at the start of a call, I would normally want to get some buy-in that they're on this 30-minute call for 30 minutes. Richard, you said on the email when I sent the invite over that you had 30 minutes. Is that still the case? And Richard might say, yep, Matt, that's still the case, no problem. Got a hard stop though at 11. Fine, no problem. If I don't get that feedback from Richard or he says something like, actually, no, I've only got 5 minutes, that's starting to obviously tell me about what Richard really thinks about this meeting. And again, doesn't mean it's a deal breaker, But what it starts to do is it starts to bring into play this kind of equality that I'm searching for in every sales call. I want us both to be equals. If we're going to do work together, then we've both got to be equal. I sent you an invite for 30 minutes because you inquired. I want 30 minutes of your time, unless you've got a justifiable reason for us not having that. So time is really important. And as long as they give me 30 minutes or 20, whatever the agreement was, I now know I can do everything in that time to help them. Okay. The second thing I'm going to do with them is I'm going to lower that anxiety even more by explaining to them that I might not be a fit for them. I have got no idea at this moment in time whether I can or I can't help them. We haven't had a conversation. So I often say on number 2, look, I've no idea if we're a fit. If we're not a fit and we find that out in the next 5 or 10 minutes, let's both agree to end it there. Let's not waste each other's time. And when buyers hear sellers say that to them, they think, great, this is perfect. I don't want to be sitting here for 30 minutes with someone who can't help me. This guy or girl really cares about my interests as much as their own. That seems like a good idea. So explaining at the start what's going to happen at the end is a really good idea. And by saying to people, look, if we're not a fit for you, it's no problem. Sometimes that happens. Let's just agree to part company. But, and this is the second part of that, if it looks at the end of this conversation like there's some value in having a second call, then I'm going to suggest that before we end this call, we get our diaries open and we put a date in for the next one. Is that okay with you? And I've never had anyone say no to me. And the value of setting up the next call at the start of the first one, I can't tell you what a difference that makes to my results. So for those of you that are struggling to get second calls, start asking for it at the start, but frame it in a very safe environment. Okay. The third non-negotiable, last one of 3, there are a number of them, I'll just share the third one, is there has to be an agenda. Because if you've ever been to a meeting and there wasn't an agenda, it's a complete and utter farce. It goes in all sorts of directions. No one knows who's doing what. It's a waste of time. So on every sales call that you have, always have an agenda. And there are 2 agendas because there are 2 of us. My agenda is what I'm going to refer to as the global agenda. This is the overarching reason why we're on the call. I would have understood that they would have had some interest in my service because the contact form would have said something like, we're interested in GDPR training. So the global agenda in that example would be, my understanding is you're on the call because you want to know a little bit more about GDPR training. Is that right? And they're going to say yes to that for obvious reasons. Okay. The second agenda is their agenda, and it's called the specific agenda. And so the follow-up is, great. So if that is your understanding too, what specifically do you need to achieve on this call then? And what I'm looking for there is 3 or 4 specific reasons why they need GDPR training, digital marketing, fire protection, whatever it might be, sales training. And I'm going to ask them for 2, 3, maybe even 4 specific points. And I'm going to write them down when they tell me what they are. And I'm going to give them the space to explain what they are. And if you start to realize now at the top of number 2, at the very height of them feeling great, you can start to see that if you're on the receiving end of a salesperson who said, tell me all the specific things that need to happen on this call, you start to feel quite good about yourself. And then when you unload and start to write down, well, I've got a problem with this isn't working. Last time we had a digital marketing, they were hopeless because of this, that, and the other. And you give them the space to let off steam like that and give you their specific problems, people will feel good because people love to be listened to. They do like the sound of their own voice. But more importantly, if you give them that space, they'll keep talking. And the benefit and the value of getting their specific agenda points is massive, because when point number 3 comes along, which is the reason why they're actually on the call, all you're going to do is ask them questions about those 3 points on their specific agenda. And where most people go wrong, guys, is they kitchen sink it. So rather than the 3 specific points that the buyer has raised, they'll bring number 4 in, number 5 in, and we do this, and we've got one of those, and 3 of those are over there. And what we start to do there when we kitchen sink it is we confuse the buyer. Where they were originally super focused on those 3 specific problems that they've got, that they've come to you for help and advice with, we've now bamboozled them with this wonderful Pandora's box of absolute nonsense. Selling is a really simple thing to do if you know how to do it. But we make so many foolish mistakes to make selling difficult. And 2 ears, 1 mouth is a classic, pointer at this point. Just shut up and let them speak. And then we start to dissect the reasons. So, okay, so you mentioned you got a problem with digital marketing. The previous supplier wasn't very good. Can you give me some feedback about why they weren't good? What was going on in your business at the time that caused you to get them involved in the first place? What was it about the service you didn't like? What would you have done differently in hindsight? And when I start asking those questions, I get even more clarity around the reasons that they've got. And as long as I'm sitting in front of someone who looks like the right kind of person for me, and we'll call that person an ideal customer profile, I'll know that I can solve their problem. Or at the end of 3, do you know what? We're the wrong fit. I can't help you. And it's over. So 20 minutes into the call is quite an important time. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? It's probably a better way of saying that. Okay, so now we spent quite a lot of time now on reason, asking loads of different questions. Again, we can run a whole different session on the sorts of questions to ask. There's some big ones in there that you're going to need to know about. Sadly, you are going to need to know about money, because if they haven't got any, it's curtains. We're not a charity at the end of the day. But I would imagine most people who reach out to you, this we'll call it an inbound lead, aren't coming onto the call because they haven't got cash. They're coming onto the call to work out if they should be spending it with you. But if you find out later on in the conversation that they haven't got money, I would class that as a bit of a waste of your time. So try and get that cash conversation in there earlier. And there are some sensitive questions that I can help people with after this call, perhaps, on how you solve that problem. But anyway, end of reason, we're into 4. And 4 is where we rectify. Now, 4 is what I'll call the proposal, right? Now I feel comfortable to know that I can help them. Now, I'm not going to give them a written proposal because I know they want to steal that information, but I'm more than happy to give them a verbal one. And it will probably sound something along the lines of, look, listen, that's great information. Thank you so much for answering those questions. I'm really confident actually now that the problems that you've got, I can solve for you. Now, unfortunately, they're not going to say, great, sign me up at that point. They're going to ask, okay, how are you going to do that? And so you have to give this verbal proposal about how you do it. But you only present against the specific agenda points. So, Richard, at the start when you said you had a problem with X, it's quite a common problem, by the way. We solved that for a few people. Well, the way that we would address that is with Y. And that issue that you've got going on with B, that can be solved quite quickly with D. And I'm really happy that you mentioned the last point, X, because we've got a really useful way of being able to manage that for you. So in terms of those 3 issues you came to me with, I'm really confident that we can solve them. End of pitch. And if you've ever heard of the salesman's silence, it's not a tactic, it's an absolute fact that you must shut up at that point. Because what we've now achieved by the end of point 4 is we've allowed the buyer to feel great about themselves and think in a very positive way. We've taken them on a roller coaster journey into the dark side, where they start to realize through your great questions the impact of not taking action, the challenge that comes with staying still where they are and not moving, the problems that they might have in their job if they don't solve this problem for their organization. And they're feeling relatively flat at this point, okay, which is a good thing, because now we know that we've got them to a position where they're starting to solve themselves emotionally. And I've delivered back to them a verbal proposal which solves all of those problems. Now I have to be quiet. Now I need them to speak next, because what's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 seconds, and sometimes it goes on even longer, is they are processing information. This is where they justify intellectually. And if you don't give them that space, and I've seen it many, many times where people don't, I used to do it all the time in the past, I'll say something like, so this, that, and the other, what's that like? Is that the sort of thing you're looking for? We haven't really talked much about fees. I could probably have a conversation and see if we can get that price down a bit for you. You interrupt their pattern of thought. So it's really important at the end of 4, you leave a big gap. And what you're looking for at the end of that, if you've done your job properly, is for them to say something like, okay, that sounds pretty positive. What do we do next? If you hear that, you've cracked it. If you hear, I think I need to think that over, doesn't mean to say you've lost. What you've got to do is allow them more space to continue to think intellectually. So you push them back in and go, no problem at all. Just out of curiosity, what are some of the things that you need to think a bit more about? Can I help you with those? Push them back into thinking. But ultimately, more often than not, you'll get to a place where They start to feel positive and they go, yeah, okay, there's a fit, potentially a fit here. Now, what you sometimes get, of course, is 0.5. And 0.5 is where they come up with some sort of objection. So we talked about the bias, process, and mislead. At this point, because you verbally give them an indication on your fees, you might not have been exact with how much it costs. Quite often, you might just say, look, ballpark figure. Most clients who are looking for that solution, somewhere between this and that is normally where you'd expect to be budgeting. Is that the sort of numbers you're expecting? Something along those lines. You've got to touch budget at some point. But if they come back to you and go, look, it sounds great, but I'm now slightly concerned about the fees, what you have to do in step 5, resolve, is resolve that problem. You have to reverse their objection. If you've done your job properly in 3, you've created enough collateral so that price isn't the problem. Because if you questioned correctly, and then you've rectified and demonstrated that your product or service makes them more money than it costs them, they won't have a price objection. Because if it costs them 50, but it makes them 500, they'll go for it. And where we get it wrong with sales, and certainly with price, and for those of you that had the issue at the start with price being quite dominant in your sales conversations, it's simply because we haven't created a bigger return on investment at the end. So spending more time in reason with impactful questions about the challenge it brings if you don't do something, and then the positive upside of the benefit that your service brings to them in the future, you start to see how they can then benchmark the price of your service or product against the value that they get in return for investing in. And the price then doesn't become a problem. The price then becomes the conduit to getting that success, so that reward, that solution. So in 5, we might have to just be prepared to handle some of those objections that might come. Then finally, we've got to close the conversation, but we want them to return and come back. But the good news is, in step 2, we agreed at the start what was going to happen at the end. So as long as they say to me, feels like a fit, what happens next? I said, well, at the start I mentioned, if it looked good, we get our diaries open, let's just do that. And it's as simple as that. And they get the diary open, and you put the next date in. And then you agree and summarize what the actions were. Summary is a really important step, by the way, in return. I always say to wherever possible, always, not always, most of the time, wherever possible, I say it's been a really good use of my time. Has it been for you? Most people say it's been really helpful. Thank you very much. Great. We've talked about quite a lot of stuff in the last 30 minutes. I think we should summarize. Do you want to go first? And I always ask them to summarize first. And there's a reason I do that, because most buyers don't take notes. I don't know if you've noticed that, but they never do. I want them to summarize first because I want to make sure they've been listening, that they're engaged, that they're attentive. The words that they say and the way that they say the summary points back to me gives me a massive indication about their appetite to move forward. Okay, Matt, so we talked about this. You said you were going to do that. I'm going to go and make sure I get this, that, and the other. I'm going to talk to Jan. I'm going to talk to Dave. I'm going to set up that meeting for you. And the benefit of having them come back to me with a summary is I can make sure they haven't missed anything. So I might say, yeah, but don't forget, Tash, you missed this point. I said I'd agree to send you this information. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. So we've summarized. We know exactly what we're going to do next. We've got a date in the diary. End of conversation. Okay. And what I mean by that is end it. I talked my way out of really good sales opportunities on the chat from the meeting room to the lift. Because, the pressure's off. Sounds like we've got a conversation going here. Got a date in the diary. They walk me to reception. And they say, so where are you going next? And I say something foolish because I drop my guard along the lines of, oh yeah, I'm off to see Sam now. What a pain in the arse she is. And they go, Sam's a pain in the arse. I wonder what he thinks about me. Does he think I'm a pain in the arse? And then the next thing that happens, of course, all that brilliant work that you've done, by getting them back to that middle line, which is confidence, we destroy in a heartbeat. So the name of game of point 6, summarize, date in the diary, get out of it. Few wrap-up points, and then if you want, in the next couple of minutes, we can just do any Q&A if anybody's got any questions. So hopefully that sort of speed date through how I go about my job has brought some, at least some clarity to the way that people can help people buy from you. It certainly works for me. There's no guarantees it will work for you, but hopefully you can see some sense in some of it. At the end of the day, it's nothing I don't think you don't already know. I think all I'm really doing is bring it to your conscious attention. If you want to sell more, okay, first step. I don't have a doubt for a minute that every product or service that you sell is brilliant. But please take this in the spirit I send this message. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your product or service. They don't. What do they care about? They care about what's in it for them. The golden rule in sales is people buy for their reasons, not yours. And when I changed my psychology 6 or 7 years ago, life got better for me, right? I don't doubt for a minute you've got a fantastic product or service. That's not my point. My point is really what people want is the outcome. Most of you would much rather be down the pub tonight having a pint, but you're going through this misery because you're hopeful that at the end of it, there might be 1 or 2 things to take away that could make your life better. And I can frame that around all training. No one wants to go on training. What they want is the outcome that the training delivers. And it's exactly the same with sales. Remember, everything is bought emotionally first. I don't know anybody who's bought a Porsche 911 logically. It ain't going to happen, right? I want that Porsche to make me feel fantastic. People are going to really like me because I've got an expensive car. Oh, hang on a second. I play golf. I can't get the golf clubs in the car. Just justify that rationally. I'll give up golf. I'm buying the car. Everything's bought emotionally. If you can't take your prospect through an emotional journey and then give them the space to confirm it intellectually, you'll make your life harder for yourself. Do not be scared to ask the difficult and challenging questions that most people who are your competitors will never ask. The sorts of questions that get people to move. What happens if you don't go forward? What's the impact if you do? Why didn't that work last time you tried it? Why are you coming to me for help? Someone said to me on that call this afternoon, so why should we're going for 3 suppliers? Why should we pick you? My response to her was, I've no idea, but why would you want to? And you say that because you're confident about your product or service. And it's no longer about, are they going to buy from me? It's about whether I'm going to let them in a respectful way. Be really selective with who you sell to. And I promise you, people will buy from you. The customer isn't always right. They rarely are right. They always lie. We prove that to ourselves because most of us will accept that that buyer's journey also relates to us when we buy things. Okay? The customer isn't always right. Our job as salespeople, if you're happy to accept that we'll all be salespeople until at least 7:05, is to help people understand if they are right. So it's very much a case of diagnosis. When I go to the doctors and say I've got a headache, she doesn't say to me, come back and see me on Tuesday, I'll operate on you. What she says to me is, tell me about your headache. Which part of the head? How often does it go on for? What sort of pain is it like? Does it come and go or is it all the time? What time of day does it happen? And that's what sales is about. It's about diagnostics, it's about asking questions. We should be talking 20% of the time. They should be talking 80% of the time. A prospect who's listening is not a prospect at all. Start with the end in mind. 2 things to bear in mind. We talked about it earlier. Start by getting that point in that date in the diary at the start of the conversation. No idea if I can help you. If you're open to allow me to ask you a few questions, I'll certainly find out if we can be a fit. If we're not, I'll just give you your time back. But if we are, my suggestion is we do the next thing. Do you want to tell me what the next thing is? There's only one thing. They go, yeah, what's that? Well, we'll just put a date in the diary and have a second call. Yeah, great, let's do that. I can remind them then that start with a meeting at the end. Sorry, start with the meeting conversation at the start, at the beginning. And then the second thing is, start with the end in mind means start with what the buyer wants to achieve 3 months after you've left them. It's a great question to ask buyers. Let's just pretend for a minute, Richard, that you decided to go ahead and buy from me. And I know you're not there yet, but let's just pretend you're about to. Tell me what has to have happened 3 months after I finished working with you that makes you say, the best thing I ever did was get Matt involved. And Richard's going to go, well, that will have changed. That will no longer be a problem. And there'll be cash flowing through my till. Great. Okay. Start framing conversations with what they want. And I think you make your sales life a little bit easier. Last 2. If this has inspired you to come up with some kind of process, I would be hugely delighted. All I can say to you is, when I used to wing it, it used to go horribly wrong. Okay. Since I've been using a process, and there are various different ones out there, but all broadly in line with each other, all I now focus on is the steps of the process. I'm not interested in whether they buy or they don't buy at the moment. What I'm interested in is, can I get them going in a positive direction? And then can I take them in a negative direction? If I can do that through those 6 steps, I give myself a much better chance of getting their business. And that sort of leads me into the final point, which is this. If you want to be really successful and grow your business, from a sales perspective, detach yourself from the outcome, because you cannot lose what you haven't got. And I remind myself that on every sales call I have with someone who isn't yet a client. I can't lose this deal because I haven't got it. And it takes so much pressure off. And it allows me to go into just a normal conversation. I'll start turning up the heat, don't worry, if it looks like they could be a good fit, especially if I know I can help them improve. Then I get quite passionate about it. But at the moment, just try and detach yourself from the outcome. Try and go into every sales call thinking that you don't need the business, even if you do. Because if you do, it will come out in space. People will see that you're desperate and you're pushy. So try and get yourself away from that. And just be comfortable with the fact that you've got a fantastic product or service, and it's your choice if they buy from you, not theirs. And without being disrespectful, I think that gives you a much greater chance. Is everyone happy with that? Okay, I've got a website, salescadence.co.uk. And the only reason I'm showing you this is if you go to the website and you click that green button, for those that you want to, there's a 50-question audit, which will give you a score based on what I believe are 50 really good examples of how to improve your sales. So if you click that and you go through that, you can take that audit. The email comes directly to me, nobody else, and I'll get your results back, okay? But you'll also get your results as well, and you'll start to see which areas you're okay at and which areas perhaps you might need some improvement. And if you want to reach out and say, I could really do with a little bit of help here, maybe we can have that conversation. Guys, I think that's the end of the conversation as far as the slides are concerned. I hope it was useful.
There's a ton of questions. Everybody's been popping stuff in the chat for you, Matt.
Okay, let's have a quick look.
Where do we start?
Yeah, I can sell hidden information, how you fix your screen. Brilliant, love that. I need to find more clients. They're not finding my website. Talk to Sam.
Yeah, I have had to look at that actually. So I've got some information for you, Paul. If you send me, you've got 2 websites as well, just FYI, which is they're both not performing very well. If you send me an email to Sam@MeasureBrilliance, I'll send you those reports. But I only have one piece of advice: put more content on whichever one you want to grow.
Yeah, great. Is there more to sales than just helping prospect clients? It's a good question. Obviously, to get a sale, you've got to go through that prospect arrangement that I've discussed. The easiest sale you'll ever make is the second one. So much pain. It's a real pain in the backside and a huge expense to go and find new business, right? My advice to anybody is when you found somebody and they bought from you, go and help them buy some more stuff. Easier, because all the trust stuff's already, the rapport thing's kind of done, yeah, the trust thing's done. So that would be that. I want to mention find the right clients. So rather than keep the lights on sales activity, deeper relationships, great. I agree with you 100%. If you don't know how to find who your ideal customer profile is, there are plenty of exercises out there. I've got a book called Converted. You'll find it in there. There's an exercise in there. Get really, really clear on who you want to work with. Sack everybody else, as long as your revenue allows that to happen, of course. But for those of you that are self-employed like I used to be, you kind of earn the right to sell to who you want to. And I know it's not easy in the start because it's all about making sure you've got the cash to keep the lights on. But in principle, you have earned the right by stepping off the treadmill to go and sell and spend time with who you want to. So really value that, but work hard at knowing who your ICP is. And then, of course, get Sam to set your optical marketing up to sell just to that ICP or just attract that ICP. So lots of examples of people's websites I see where they're trying to do a catch-all. I'm confused. I don't know who you're for. I'm going to go somewhere else.
Not only that, just a bit of sort of anecdotal tech takeaway this year is I think we're all so awash with ambient background noise that you've got to dial it up a little bit. You've got to do something special. So better to spend a bit of time working on a few people than just spewing content out. We're working on a project at the moment. This is what we're trying to get specialists at. And the guy I work with had described it. He said, our job is to turn up to the Mr. Whippy machine and make the perfect ice cream with the right amount of flakes in it and sprinkles on the top. He said, because what a lot of behavior is that people just turn the ice cream machine on and then they look at you like, well, you've got loads of ice cream, what's your problem? And you didn't tell me you needed just to make anything specific from it. And that's the point, make the perfect ice cream and spend a long time doing it. And as Matt said, if you built the privilege of stepping off the merry-go-round, it's worth it. That's worth the extra time, because you're not just spewing stuff out.
A couple of really good ones in here. So should we concentrate on promoting the benefits of what we sell rather than the products itself? Yes and no. Features and benefits, no one's interested in. So many salespeople show up and throw up their benefits all over the people in front of them. You'll see that quite a lot of networking events. If you go to the wrong ones, someone says, so what do you do? And they go, we're the best, we're the fastest, we've been in business the longest, we've got 4 of these, 15 of those, we'll get them as fast. And I don't want to know about that. What I want to know is what's in it for me. Every conversation I have with someone who doesn't say to me, look, I don't know if I can help you, but the sort of people we help are those CEOs who are really worried at night they're going to get a tap on the shoulder from the ICO, because you can get fined 4% of global turnover if you have a significant data breach. We take that misery away. I'm probably speaking to the wrong person, but is that the sort of thing that you worry about at night time? And in asking a question like that, the person on the receiving end is either going to say yes or no. And in 10 seconds, I've qualified them. Okay, but what I'm not going to do is tell them about, we've got 20 full-time DPOs, we've been active since 2017, we've had 500 clients. No one cares. So the benefits come at the end, and it's the upside. So rather than sell the product or the service, sell the outcome that the product or service delivers. Call that a benefit if you want. I'd much rather talk to it along the lines of outcomes and upsides. As a buyer, if a website doesn't show me a price, then go elsewhere. Great. So you obviously buy on price then. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. My website's got a pricing. But if I lose you, that's my fault for not being more engaging with the content I've got on there, not populating a load of products for prospects on YouTube or LinkedIn, or writing 2 books or standing on stages. If I haven't done enough of that activity to get you engaged, then, and the first time you see me is you come on my website and you can't find a price and you leave, that's on me. But if someone goes onto a website and they don't find a price, it's probably B2C land rather than B2B. That's just my observation. There's a great book called They Ask You Answer. Marcus Sheridan, he talks specifically about putting prices on website. He absolutely insists that you do, so that people don't do what you rightly said and move on. My argument is, if you go on a website and you see a price, you'll go on someone else's and see their price as well. And then what we're doing, we're playing the price game. I can't sell to anyone on price. I'm really expensive. I'm eye-wateringly expensive. In the data protection world, we are premium. I had that conversation again today with that lady when she said it's about price. I said, look, I'm the wrong person for you. We're expensive. And then she starts to backtrack. It's a straight line for me. Good luck with that. It's one of the more cycles of the S curve. Is one or more cycles of an S? Is it one or more cycles of an S curve? Not quite sure what that means. Doesn't matter. If I haven't understood that correctly, shout out. But if it's a straight line for you, great, go for it. If it's not, then maybe there's another way of doing it. Icebreaker, know loads of those, yeah. But if you're referring to rapport, remember, rapport is not saying things like, where are you going on your holiday next year? Or that's a great picture of you, who are you playing golf with? The nice stuff is really essential, don't get me wrong. But at the start of that conversation, when you're with a complete stranger, sometimes if you become over familiar at the beginning, we start to look very salesy. And actually the correct approach is, can I get them to a position of confidence where they feel calm and certain that they're in the company of what essentially could be a good experience over the next 15 or 20 minutes. So an icebreaker for me would be, tell me what you know about the DPO Centre. And most people don't know the answer to that, because all they do is Google and they find them on page 1 of Google. So then I'm going, the second one is, did you know much about what we do? You know, if it's of interest to you at some point, maybe we'll decide I'll share it with you. If you ask that question, by the way, I'll promise you it'll be the end. If you say to someone, what do you know about my company? And they say nothing, what a wonderful opportunity if you do a really small mini pitch. A 10 or a 15-second one, a bit like my ICO, sleepless nights, 4% global turnover. Imagine if you had the opportunity at the start of a meeting where you said to somebody, tell me what you know about my business, and they go, well, not much really, I found you on Google. Well, let me just tell you, just so that you know you're in the right place. We solve this for these sorts of people. And you know that that is one of the things that they want, because they're your ideal customer. They start to feel good about themselves. They're justifying why they were there. Last one, what is my cost benefit? One of my services is essential regulatory. No cost benefit except falling foul of the law. People take the risk. Great, sell that problem. Are you the sort of person that feels like you could be falling foul of the law? I take that risk away from you. Any questions? Is everyone still conscious? Has it been a good use of your time? Great. Sam, over to you.
Absolutely fantastic, Matt, as usual. We will record this and put it onto the ISTN website and share it out. We've got some events coming up. Actually, I said I would drop the link in, so I'm going to quickly do that. If you bear with me, I'm really keen for you guys to get access to this list because we have lots of others. If you go onto that website and go to, there's an event calendar and an events list. We've got a number of different events, and they sit all the way through, as I say, from creative, digital creative, which tends to sit in the space that Matt's in, where we're looking more at kind of like online selling, etc., right the way through to IoT. We've got a lovely talk actually this month about cybersecurity. So the Eastern Cyber Resilience Centre is opened up by the police. It's a private entity. They're looking at cybercrime. So I can't help but feel that there's not a single part of the companies that I work with where cybersecurity isn't a huge concern at the moment. Obviously in the same realms of what Matt's doing. So this kind of regulation. And it's, we're looking at digital maturity, and it's one of the things that as Suffolk, we're really keen to we're a small county, which is a negative in some ways, but the positive is that we all know each other and we can all learn together and be the best in class. So that's what we're aiming to do. So sign up for any of the sessions that you want to come to. As I say, they're all free to attend. If you either know of any speakers, we're really keen to see if we can get some international speakers in as soon as possible, certainly at the beginning of next year. There's some really cool stuff coming up, as well as our talks. We've got a hackathon that's starting to be created, and also an innovation race, which is around LoRaWAN and smart technology. We've also got various different projects that we'll start to share more, and tell us anything that you think we should be sharing with a local audience if there's anything that they need to know. So thank you so much for attending. Sign up for anything else, and we will see you soon. Take care. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.